Right, welcome to another episode of Chew the Fat. And what are we chewing the fat on this time, Leo?
Customer expectations. So we're going to talk about things we can do in the business to improve the customer journey and the expectations.
We're talking about customer value, Leo. That's what you're supposed to say. Customer value.
Build customer value into something without necessarily spending loads of money.
Yeah, and the inspiration for me was, if we just go straight into it, was a chap called Rory Sutherland. I heard it on a different podcast. He's a very famous marketer. What's his book called?
Alchemy is one of his books.
Alchemy is one of his books, yeah. Really interesting bloke. And he speaks about a phrase or a term called psychological moonshot. And he uses, there's one really good case study which is Uber.
Yeah.
But I prefer the Domino's story. So if you think about, if you order a pizza and everybody's always, as soon as you place order, where's the pizza? When's it coming? How long is it going to be?
Hungry instantly.
You get hungry instantly, yeah, and you just get that like, oh, come on, hurry up. And then Domino's introduced, I don't know when it was, 10 years ago or so, they introduced an app, didn't they? And the idea behind this marketing psychological moonshot is to try and think of things that are low cost but incredibly high value. So what happened in this Domino's example was everybody wanted their pizza quicker, or that's what they thought that they wanted. And for Domino's to be able to cook the pizzas quicker and deliver the pizzas quicker is really expensive. But what they actually wanted was to know where the pizza was and to remove the anxiety out of that transaction. And I feel like, and Uber was exactly the same. Making a taxi arrive faster is very expensive, but a very simple app to tell you where your taxi is.
I think it's really thinking outside of the box to the problem, because naturally the problem, you're not fixing the problem is in speeding up the pizza, and it's there's another one that he mentioned about waiting for a lift. You push a button and there's a hotel that had slow lifts, and in the end they put mirrors, and then people push a button, check themselves out in the mirror, and then all of a sudden they forget how long it's taken. So they haven't actually cured the problem, but they have cured the problem.
And I feel like it's a really interesting thought, and I've stewed on this. So I'd like, it's one of the things that we really want to chew the fat on. Essentially, is there anything in our industry that you can get those same relatively cheap wins that really improve the customer's experience and really adds value to the customer? Because
and the other thing with Rory Sullivan, with the app did is it stopped people phoning.
It reduced the complaints for Domino's, didn't it?
So they used to phone up to say, when is my pizza going to be ready? Well, that takes away that. And when they had to stop making the pizza to answer the phone, it delayed it even further. And I suppose
so they actually ended up making the pizza faster.
But that's actually quite transferable into our industry, isn't it? Because if you think what's the biggest thing that people worry about, it's how much is it going to cost and when's it going to be ready? And those are the sorts of things that, not necessarily with an app, but we can intervene to reduce that anxiety.
And it is, if you have to think about what does a bad experience in our industry look like, it's one that's full of anxiety, full of the unknown. And I don't know about you guys, but we survey every single customer, and if we get a customer complaint, I can guarantee somewhere along the line communication has failed, and it's misalignment of the customer's expectation.
If you think yourself, if you're dealing with something yourself, it's often communication. Could be a solicitor or anything that you're
frustrated by.
It's often, and it's like at a point, if you ever ring somebody and they say, "I'll get them to call you back," I'm kind of like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll try again," because
they're not going to call you back. Yeah, and imagine if that's happening in your garage. Imagine if you've got customers ringing for an update. I mean, customers shouldn't be ringing. I mean, the ideal scenario is customers don't ring for an update because you've rang them, you've given them an update, you've texted them, you've rang them, whatever it is. They know where they are. They know what the situation is.
And I think that so when you look at what we've got control of within our businesses, it's you've got the ability to influence how people see things, and you've got the ability to influence how they feel about it. And that's, you can't see that a car has been serviced these days. Yeah. Because you can't tighten a handbrake like you used to before. It doesn't. It has different effect.
That's quick when that was quick 10 mil span on there.
Yeah,
and it's a really good point, because that was one of the quickest parts of a service, but it was like, oh, that feels good.
But that was a psychological moonshot, wasn't it? That was a small act that you could do that made a big impact. And when you got in the car, oh, this feels different.
Yeah,
that's it.
Is there anything that you've done in your business then as a actual example of this?
So I think I think we could go back to looking at the fact that we've got windows into our workshop. You know, that's something that doesn't cost any money. It doesn't change anything in terms of time, but it changes a lot in terms of perception because it's transparent and it's viewable. So where you've got the anxiety of, oh, I've got my second largest purchase going into this garage, well, I can see what's happening in there, so it's absolutely fine. And I think that's an example of something that we've done within our business that's made a big difference.
That, to be fair, we built that into this new branch as well. Same sort of concept.
And I suppose, again, the other thing when you're talking about is customers waiting. So, you know, I think we've probably all got customers that come into us. So they do 300 miles a year. They absolutely cannot cope without their car for like one day it's in the workshop, and they're phoning you like, when's my car ready? So you've got to try and build into your process ways of making sure they understand what's going to happen, and then follow up on making sure that does happen. And you just remove some of that anxiety and that stress and that weight. So it's not an app, but it's a manual intervention coupled with using systems and
so this
things.
is as opposed to them coming in, dropping the keys off. You take them, thank you very much.
And probably sort of things though, that they're often the things that will still fall down when people get extra busy or someone's off on holiday. So that's the biggest problem I find. It's it's like any process is only good to the people that are delivering it. So is there any things that you can be? Have you done anything that's kind of more automated or streamlined or like religiously happens with every customer? Or is it a product you kind of work on now? Or
it's something that it's you know, obviously we use our management system to massively influence the process that we go, and that goes from the stage of booking through to everything. And obviously we use Garage Hive, which you all know, but it's automating those functions which are easy to fall down, and then you need to intertwine that, in my opinion, with the customer service touch points that make the difference. That, you know, we don't want to be sterile in our communication, but the automation of things that happen, you know, your car's in tomorrow.
But the booking confirmation and the booking reminder is the easiest way to remove anxiety from this very anxiety-riddled transaction, isn't it? It's so easy to do these days. Nearly every management system will do it.
I think that's the thing, though, isn't it? For me, when I've been looking at this, we called it something we've been working on for a while, but still not got there, is stratospheric customer service project. And all these things, like reminders here and there, like almost everyone that we're at least competing with and dealers are doing that. So it's what can you do in addition people aren't doing that doesn't cost money. But
I do think it's important that people do still consider the basics. I think there'll still be a lot of garages out there not even sending a booking reminder, or even an MOT reminder, you know.
I said
really basic stuff.
Sometimes you get comments from people you know who've booked in, your neighbour or something. I was impressed because I got a reminder and then a phone call before I came in, and then I got a survey, and like things you take now for granted actually do look quite impressive to the customer.
I think one of the things that we've really heavily worked on over the last year or so is we do vehicle health checks, which is a completely different topic to cover, but it's something part of our process. And it's as the customer arrives, that process is explained to the customer what we do, and then we use a system for online authorization, essentially, which sends the customer pictures and information and even videos on any faults that are found on their vehicle, of which that they can then just take their time to understand and perhaps send it to a partner.
Transparency as well.
Complete transparency. And again, that for me is one, explaining, so not blindsiding the customer with, here you go, here's a digital report that you've got to look at without giving them any foresight to it, but explaining what their day is going to look like. And then providing real clarity on what the fault is that's been found. And again, that's adding, in my opinion, that adds so much value to a garage's transaction as opposed to either just a phone call at any time, it could be any time during the day, and then just explaining a list of issues which they may or may not understand. And then they've got to make a decision reasonably quickly, either on the phone or they've got to ring someone up and try and convey that information to somebody else. That's just for me, that just feels like a really harsh transaction to be part of as a customer.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, having the ability to show people what you're doing, because as I said before, you can't see a service anymore, you can't feel a service anymore, but if you can show bits of what you've done by using pictures, you know, amber, red, green, whatever it may be, there's lots of systems that use that it really creates value and it helps to build value, and that's the important thing for me.
Example of something we've just done, and one of my ideas along this, again, going back to the what can we do that's a bit different. So we have a driver that does collections and deliveries, and obviously during the day he's got a bit of a lull. But one of our biggest issues is still car park. You've got plenty of space in the mornings, everyone parks, and that's an issue. So we so Ron now, first thing in the morning, he spends the first hour and a half literally outside meeting and greeting customers. So they come in, he takes the keys, parks the car for them, says, Adrian's looking after you today, go inside. And we've just pushed back the collection delivery, or we're focused on getting it the day before, so we've not impacted that service, but we're just maximising his time, and that is an instant kind of like...
It just relaxes them, doesn't it? It's like...
I think it's a surprise. You don't expect it either.
Yeah.
You get that from like a 5-star hotel.
But it's better than walking into a reception and you got eyes on you and...
Yeah, or just not be able to park. And you
or not, even worse, which is really common. And
where to park as well, because that's the other thing. I mean, we're on an enterprise park, so we've got businesses around us. Obviously, where we are today hasn't got that, and you haven't got that on your side.
And again, not everybody can probably have that luxury of having that person, but you might have someone that's washing cars and you've not thought about it. So let's just for the first, and again, we're not doing it all day because we would need to employ somebody then.
Yeah.
But I think the busiest time is that first few hours of the morning. So it's thinking about what resources you have got, which you might be able to kind of utilise in a different area. Or having someone cover reception for the first sort of few hours of the day to meet and greet customers come through the door. Because if you've got kind of one or two advisors, and then once they're with two customers, or the phone rings, another customer
someone's
comes
waiting.
And then the other thing we looked at doing is, which we haven't implemented yet, but I still really want to do it, is about coffees and drinks. So when we're booking a customer in, at the end of the phone call, we randomly say, "Oh, by the way, a random question, but how do you like your coffee? How do you like your drink?" And they say, "Oh, I have a cappuccino and 1 sugar," or whatever. And then we put that as a customer note on the system. And then when they come in and they get checked in, sit down with an advisor, someone goes and makes them their coffee to their requirements. And kind of, there's your cappuccino and 1 sugar. Yeah. And again, we've got a coffee machine.
It's so cheap. They can get a coffee anyway.
Yeah. And I think that'd be such an awesome thing to do, which doesn't cost money, but it's just managing that whole process.
And actually, you saying about the notes side of it, that's a really important part of using systems that you've got, that you sort of update the notes to say, you know, this customer when they're booking in would normally have a courtesy car, would normally have it collected, would normally want it. So it helps to build rapport. I mean, with our size business, we know lots of our customers firsthand, but when you start to get to the size of your businesses where you're not going to know every customer, these little things can make a huge difference. And it's the details that make the difference, isn't it?
But for me, it's more about, again, picking the car up, having a little gift pack with some sweets in there or something. Or
there's Rebecca Pullen at Carmaster. She has a little tub of branded sweets. Amazing. And the great sweets as well. But she gives them to every single customer. Every customer, bar none, gets one of them. And there's another garage, ADS, who I believe an invoice of a certain value, you get a bottle of wine. Left in the car, like a branded bottle of wine as well, which again, it's these...
Yes, we got like some little gift bags where we was going to put the invoice in and like, I don't know, like an ice scraper or just a few things like that. But there's lots of things you can...
There's lots of little added things, but for me, the most... If we think about the problem with this transaction is the anxiety, and I think that focusing on reducing customer anxiety is the best win. That is the best way to add value to a customer's journey.
And also personalising as much as you can, because that's the problem that is with, you know, gifts that you give out to people is it's not very personal. And the first time they receive it, it's good because it's something unexpected. But the second time they receive it, it's expected, and then if it's no longer exciting or interesting.
It's like washing the car. We do car washing, and now it's just an expected thing. You end up just annoying someone because you haven't done it.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a very good point. Actually,
I would be very careful of starting something that you can't
continue.
I almost wouldn't. I wouldn't wash cars now. If I could start again, I wouldn't bother.
I think it's worth going all the way back to basics as well, because there's going to be all sorts of people along their journey listening to this and that. Just as simple as you need a nice reception.
Yeah,
you need someone really approachable on that front counter, because their first, and like you said, one of their only touch points is actually the physical space that they end up walking into to hand the key over. And often their only interaction is with the service advisor. Like you said, they can't feel the car's been serviced. They don't actually get to see the work that's completed. They have to trust someone's telling them that same person's taking money from them. So they almost base their entire experience based on a reception being quite clean. Well, actually, reception these days needs to be of a very high standard, in my opinion. But it's also that person on the front counter. They need to be approachable, smiley, happy. They need to, like you said, they need to be personable, and they need to be able to relate to the customer.
Just smiling when we even think about 3-second acknowledgement. So when someone walks through the door, within 3 seconds, they need to be acknowledged. Walking to the car after when they're going out. That's a really So we've had at one branch, we've got one of the managers doing that now. So they literally, the manager walks them out to their car. And you've seen an impact. And Net Promoter Score has gone up significantly. As well, the response rate.
And it costs very little. That's the thing.
It's nothing really.
A little bit of time.
That's what I mentioned, that if you have a fairly standard experience, customers only remember the first 2 things and the last 2 things. So the whole process of they had an MOT and a service, they've almost forgotten about that, but they'll remember the last couple of things that happened on that day.
It's I think that Sutherland, again, he mentions in any experience, you'll remember the peak, which is the highlight of whatever it was, and the end. And the end can ruin everything. It's like if you go for a great meal, and I, we probably all experience it. You go for a great meal, the service is great all the way through, but you have to wait an extra 5 minutes for the bill. You could just get frustrated by it. It's very unreasonable, but it's completely natural, isn't it? And you can almost tarnish the experience by something so basic.
And you're looking for the server to come and give you the bill. It's like, so you're sat at the table sort of glancing round to find...
You're making an effort to try and...
Yeah.
But we've all experienced that, and they could have the best chefs, they could serve the best, most expensive
and drinks. And the same with us. Again, we're busy at the end of the day, so if a customer comes to collect their car and you're rushing them, taking the money, see you later... you've ended that on a
well, for you, that might be the 20-second transaction that day, but for them, that's their £500.
So just by having that process that we walk customers to the car
slows it all down.
Doesn't really matter if that payment process was a bit longer than it should have been, or something was quite right there. The fact that you're taking that time to 10 seconds to walk into the car is something that we could all do that.
So we don't do that. I mean, occasions that we do, but we point the customer into the direction, and actually it makes a lot of sense that why wouldn't you finish that process with the almost opening the door for them. It's the same as you getting a good hotel, isn't it?
And when you consider the focus, like I said, it is, like you said, at the very last part of the transaction has a very big impact on how that customer feels.
For me, it was trying to think of things that the goal is that when that customer goes home, they go, oh wow, I had my car in today and this happened. And whether that's from getting that coffee or the attended parking in the morning or something like that, it's thinking of that, because that's what, if we have a really good experience, there has to be something that's above and beyond, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think, just going back to that, they're sat at home, I think another way to add value, and it's got multiple benefits, but surveying a customer, and I'm not talking about surveys from a position of getting feedback from the customer. That's an obvious benefit. But as a customer, and it referred to like the John Lewis effect, is that if you buy a product from John Lewis, you're going to pay probably slightly more for the product, but the returns process is so good that the trust is there, and it doesn't really matter if you pay an extra few quid, because if it goes wrong at the end of the day, they're going to look after you. And I think that as a person visiting a garage who's got anxiety about the transaction, if they know at the end of the transaction the business owner is going to reach out to them and say, was everything okay today? Is there anything that I can do to help? That is reducing anxiety and adding value. Forget about all the other benefits. I think that process alone is part of a value-added proposition.
Yeah, we added in on our booking confirmation. So when someone books in, that they will get a survey at the end asking how everything went, and that booking confirmation comes from me.
That's really clever. So you're actually lowering the anxiety before the transaction.
If you've got a new customer
we do
know about it, then
that's really clever. We don't do that. So you both in your booking confirmation, you say you're going to get a survey.
This is going to happen after.
That's really clever. Yeah, I like that. What do you two think about online booking as a value add? Do you think that's...
I think it's something that you need to have. We don't have huge uptake on it, to be fair. I think often people would like to just pick up the phone, and I think because a car can have quite a few different quirks, it might be like, I want to book a service, but I've got this going on or that going on with the car, or But I think it's definitely something you need to have, and we do get obviously bookings.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, and we do, I suppose proportionally, we do quite a lot of online bookings, and I think it's the convenience. So we make sure that our reminders go out lunchtime, and they go out at, I think, 7:30 at night.
Yeah.
So it's when people are sort of
Sat
got through the rush of getting home and dealing with the kids and those sort of things, and they're sat and they can do that. But I think online booking just provides convenience, doesn't it? I think we've all been, I think we were talking off air about the interaction of backwards and forwards of text messaging to book something. It's a pain, But if you can go and you can do it, and think about that, making that process easy.
Yeah, it's a must-have, because there'll be customers out there that if you can't book online, they'll go somewhere
You're going
else.
to lose that customer, yeah. We're up to over 30% of our overall work is booked online now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, which is quite significant. And
it saves time for your advisors as well.
well, coming back to the actually think about the Domino's thing, where they built this app and actually they ended up making the pizzas quicker, and as a result of it, there is obviously some of that going on. But there is always bias in your own preference.
Yeah.
But an online booking would probably persuade me. If I'm looking for a garage and they don't have online booking with some sort of transparent pricing, I know pricing is very difficult to make fully transparent because it's just the nature of the industry, but that would really matter to me. And again, I see that as a value add.
And we've introduced something where Katie does a lot of our pre-work before someone comes in, and we online auth before they arrive.
Yeah.
So
we do the same thing.
We have, I have a thing about surprises. And I've had a chat with the team that if someone comes in and they have a bill that's a surprise, don't expect me to stand there because I'm gone.
Yeah.
You've got to deal with that then. So if you can take out, you're talking about anxiety, if you can make sure that people know what's happening, you've got the process side of it, you've got the cost side of it, you've got the work that needs doing side of it, and
how's that pre-auth working for you? How are you?
So yeah, pre-auth is pretty good, and what happens, I think, is that people are conditioned to an expectation. And that's the key thing for me.
And what things are you putting on the pre-auth?
So if someone's booking in for a service, for example, we don't leave that to surprise. So we don't do fixed pricing. So we price up work on a ad hoc basis, as it needs doing. So we would pre-authorize anything that it's booked in for, and then they've seen it. And if they haven't authorized it, we normally ask them at that point.
So would you check things like cam belts, brake fluid chains?
We would
spark plugs.
So we would do some of that, yes. It obviously, depending on our work volumes and things, we have to take that into account for what we're booking in. But yeah, anything that's due, we're trying to check for it in advance, so we can book it in. Or if we can't do it at the time, we're talking about how we schedule that in.
So do you make sure you get the mileage when you book the vehicle in? A rough mileage of the vehicle? Or?
It's not consistent, but we try to. Yeah, but that's something that would make a difference to that whole process.
We do a pre-call to 1 or 2 days before, just to confirm the booking and things like that. But we want to do the pre-auth, and we sort of tried it for a little bit, and it worked quite well, to be fair. But
it works really well for us. We do it every car. So the day before, we will go through. We either have the service history or we don't have the service history, and that process changes. But let's say we don't. We'll look at the mileage, we'll look at the year, and then we'll get the manufacturer service schedules, and then essentially before they arrive, we'll just say, look, these might be due.
Yeah.
If you want them, you can authorize them. If not, then we'll check on the day whether it's due or not.
Yeah. So what we've started to do is we built a service package, which is obviously our standard service offering, and then we put it on as an additional item. So we have like a major service items, which is the second line, if you like. So it just, again, conditions people. We do get people saying, oh, I don't want that done now because I've only done 3,000 miles this year for the last 10 years. But it's just a way of conditioning people. And then we've got the chance to have a conversation about it when they come in. We notice you didn't authorise that. It is due based on, because that's the thing you've got to get across, isn't it, is why.
Going back to the anxiety thing of customers not knowing how long the car's going to take, I think that's such a hard thing to systemize, because you can have, in theory, statuses which update from clockings and things, but there's so many different moving parts that you can end up, I think, basically causing more problems by having
I don't think you could automate it, but I think you could manually change the status. So as a workshop controller, let's say you think, right, that job's, I'm happy to tell the customer that job's in the workshop now, and you've changed the status. I think automating it in our game is...
But the minute you're relying on a person...
Yeah, the process could fall down, But some things are worth persevering with, aren't they? And it's like... if you look at the Domino's story, there's no doubt that's won them business.
Yeah, but it's quite an easy thing that they can just implement as a piece of software which fixes that problem entirely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think one thing that I would sort of add to that is that you've got, when you're talking about building value, one of the things that I'm very conscious of, and whether it's just me, is that how long stuff takes. Because, you know, as businesses, we don't just sell time, we sell skill, we sell parts, we sell labour. And if the automation of that process is your car is in the workshop and they're getting a phone call in an hour, it actually negatively affects value, in my opinion.
It could undervalue what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the only way is phone calls or texts, you know, and I used to be really good as a service advisor. I'd even text or call a customer and say, look, there's no news, but we've not forgotten about you.
We do that. Yeah, we do that.
But I think so much of this then comes back around to there's lots of things you can systemize. There's lots of, you know, these moonshots that we can do, but ultimately it comes back down to a person, a front of house service advisor, doing a good job in a very good way and communicating with the customer. And I think dealers there's a role, like customer chasing role or something, isn't there? Like, I think their job is literally just to kind of like update customers.
Progress chaser.
Well, we you know, in our game, reality is we probably don't have that luxury or the amount of profit available.
The only way is to have more resources in the front of the house. You know, if you have less jobs per advisor, you can then make sure that these things are going to happen.
You could do. Yeah.
The cost on that though is huge.
But if you do run a garage where you've got service advisors that may be ex-technicians, or they're not necessarily people oriented and they've never had any training, it's something to, in my opinion, seriously consider. I mean, all of our front of house have had multiple training.
Yeah, it's a good question, because often one of the questions you see online on Facebook groups and things is, I need a service advisor. They'll go down there. I've got someone here that's got technical experience,
or ex-parts advisor is one that comes up.
And they seem okay. Or I've got this person that's really bubbly and energetic, but doesn't know anything about cars. And I always go, the bubbly person 100% doesn't know about cars.
Couldn't agree more.
Because it's all about the experience, isn't it? You know, as long as they've got the team in the back to back them up.
Yeah, to back them up. And as long as they are aware of what they don't know, because you don't want somebody who over promises and thinks that they know. You know, that's quite a bad trait to have in front of house. But providing they're quite honest with their knowledge, having a people person on that front counter is a genuine game changer.
In theory, if you're using the systems, like, you know, garage management systems to the real nth degree, then you can remove a lot of those gaps anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the critical thing, isn't it? Is you've got to have the capability of filling the technical gaps, because we have got a technical product that some people need that technical detail, and you've got to be able to wheel that in as necessary. And like you say, it doesn't necessarily need it front of house person, but they've got to have the ability to provide it. And that might be a link to the workshop controller or technician. It might be explainer videos. It might, you know, whatever that is.
There's lots of options.
I think it all depends massively on the business. If you've got one front of the house, they probably need to be more technical.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got more, like we have one advisor which mainly does all of that diagnostic work.
Yeah.
And we have one that mainly does the sort of service work and things like that.
You just reminded me of a good point as well, in a situation that people may be in that are listening to this, and that there is quite a healthy ratio between advisor to tech. You know, we function about 2 to 1. So 2 technicians to 1 advisor, we find is enough for the advisor to do a good enough job for the customers.
Yeah.
And if you're operating in a garage where you've got 1 front of house to 4 technicians or even 3 technicians, they just have to get through the day. And actually their focus is just not letting the customer down. Never mind it.
Missed opportunities would be huge.
Missed opportunities would be eye-watering. But it becomes more about don't upset the customer instead of try and please the customer. Do you know what I mean? Their priorities change, and you've just got to get through the day. It's just a battle.
Yeah, and you can be proactive if you've got that ratio right.
You really can be proactive. And your front of house should have a bit of time to actually be able to think ahead. Not firefight, not react to that. Can I have an update on my car? Actually, they should be able to sit there and say, I'm just going to give them an update.
Because if you're getting the update call, it's too late, isn't it? If you're getting
the minute the customer chases you, you've lost. Yeah,
you're chasing your tail probably for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
My manager told me that where I used to work was I used to say update the customers, you get away with murder.
Well, like I think if you over communicate, it's the same in any issue. If you over communicate, you know, you can solve a lot of problems. I had a really bad experience buying a car recently. The car was absolutely dreadful, and I'm not going to go into the details, but it happens. It's business, right? And you see the true colours of a business when a transaction goes wrong. To say the car was bad is an understatement, but the salesperson was that good that I gave him another opportunity to find another car because he was over communicating, apologetic. He was messaging me in the evenings. He was just absolutely brilliant. And if that's not evidence that, like you said, in a purchase that's that expensive and went that wrong, he managed to turn that around to the point where I'm happy with the business.
It's quite a common thing to say, isn't it? It's not about problems, but how we deal with the problems. And you often, if you have a customer complaint, you would say, look, problems will arise, but it's how we go about it which makes us stand out.
Really does make it. And it's actually an opportunity, isn't it? To turn it around.
You can turn a detractor or an angry customer into a raving fan.
Really strong promoter
by looking after them properly in those situations.
Yeah, and it's just dealing with them properly, isn't it? That's what it all boils down to, and that's the bit you can't automate, is it? You can set a set of procedures that if this happens, but you've got to be prepared.
I think down to experience, isn't it? Really?
Down to the experience that they receive, definitely.
So I guess to round up, then we've spoken about various ideas, and I've actually learned a couple of things from you guys, which I really like. But for anybody listening, it's really about that we do a technical role that's really complicated and of extremely high value, but unfortunately the customers don't see it, appreciate it. So you have to lean into the parts the customer feels and sees, and the customer experience.
Almost forget about the car. Just think about the customer.
Yeah, which is really hard to say as a technician. It's like it's kind of hard to accept.
The car bit should be a given. Getting the car fixed properly is a given. That's what they're bringing it to you.
Customers going to assume that whatever garage they use for the first time, they're going to fix the car.
Yeah.
So we work to that logic is that car's going to be fixed. So give a real heavy focus on every point the customer touches in your business. Are you happy with what that looks like and what that feels like?
It's like if a car comes to you because of a specialist repair that the normal garage can't do, if you can do them touch points that are above and beyond,
you're going to win all the work.
Yeah, whereas if you just fix it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, well thanks, I'll go back to our own garage again.
Go back to the other garage. Yeah. Cool. Good chat, guys. Thanks for that. I'm going to take a couple of those tips. Quite like them, actually.
They're patented, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you've just
done
patented them together.
Quickly,
okay. Sound right. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Right. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.